Hello everyone, we are back. Thank you so much for your patience. Now we are going to start with the inaugural session for today's event. I would like to begin by inviting Ms. Rama Videshri, CEO of DSCI, to deliver the welcome address. Ma'am,
Thank
please
you,
come.
Sonam. Thank you. A warm welcome to all of you who have joined us in our very first virtual conference being hosted by the National Cyber Center of Excellence, which we have established in partnership with Ministry of IT. It's the first virtual conference with security investors and startups. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, Mr. Rajan Anandan and Mr. Ajay Sani, for giving your time for this first ever conference. As most of us in this conference are aware, NASSCOM and DSCI has been working over the last few years to make India a global hub for cybersecurity. Whether it is the global services industry operating out of India, servicing several countries across the world, or whether it's global corporations choosing to prefer India as a destination for establishing their cyber centers of excellence and security operations centers, and the growing product and security startup ecosystem. We at DSCI are aware of more than 180 plus startup companies and product companies who've been doing well not only in the India geography but various other geographies. What's interesting is more than 50% of them are bootstrapped by themselves. They come with very good experience in the security industry. Almost 80% of them are cloud ready. They are innovating using cutting edge technologies. Several of our startup product stacks are built on the AI/ML platform. In the last 4 5 years, we are seeing an increasing uptake of application for patents and also receiving and grant of patents, which I think begins to talk about the innovation ecosystem. Many of them are actually, some of them are also incubated in some of our premier academic institutions like the IITs. But it's still a very nascent industry compared to the overall startup ecosystem of in India, which has really got global attention and is now getting a lot of traction from global investors and investors in India. But the cybersecurity innovation ecosystem and the startup ecosystem still needs to be nurtured. It needs to grow, and the objective of the National Center of Excellence, Cybersecurity Innovation and Product Entrepreneurship that we are
I'll give you a
establishing
heads up.
in partnership with UT. It is meant to grow this innovation ecosystem, get all stakeholders together to strategize on how do we make India a hub for security innovation on some of the new strategic areas, whether it is IoT, whether it's cloud, whether it is around Industrial 4.0, 5G, so that we make this a strategic priority for the country and for the future security of the Indian cyberspace. So the objective of this conference is to get both investors and startups to come and deliberate together. And the National Center of Excellence and another Center of Excellence that we are established in Hyderabad in partnership with Telangana government is primarily meant to do that, look at cutting edge innovation use cases through our use case clearing house kind of a concept, where we are continuously discovering use cases, doing application challenges. Ministry of Electronics, IT and DSCI is currently running a very big grand challenge initiatives where 6 complex problem statements have been opened up to the innovation ecosystem in India, researchers in India, so that they can build products not just at a prototype or an MVP stage, but a product that can be taken to the market. And 6 of those problem statements have been opened up, and the grand challenge is currently on. The interesting thing is cybersecurity, even in the NASSCOM Strategic 2020 report, the Technology Industry Strategic 2020 report, cybersecurity has been called out as one of the horizontal technologies or one of the foundational technologies, along with big data and cloud, which means this domain will see continued need for higher and higher innovation, and of course the associated investments that should fuel this innovation. Another interesting thing is, even in the current bleak scenario of the way the impact of COVID on economy is mapping out, when we see the early assessments of the global strategy consultants or any of the economists, I think global enterprises and enterprises in India will increasingly go online and increasingly go digital. With it, there will be associated cyber risks. So, cyber security and the need for fueling innovation in cyber security, so that as billions of citizens go online and billions of millions of enterprises drive a more deeper digital transformation journey and going online and servicing their customers with a cloud first or a mobile first strategy, I think we need to step up on the kind of products that we build, not only for the consumer segment but for enterprise segments across verticals. This conference is meant to be able to deliberate on that. I once again thank Mr. Rajan Anandan and Sani to join this particular inaugural plenary session, and I hand over back to Sonam so that she can invite Rajan.
Thank you, Rama ma'am. And so sorry, Mr. Rajan. Will take Mr. Sani first. He is not able to present himself on the screen, so I have taken him on my mobile phone. He wants to say a few words for all of us.
Yeah, are you able to hear me now?
Can you guys hear him?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Rama ma'am. Okay, sir, please go ahead.
Yeah. So glad to be here, Rama and Rajanji and all the investors who are participating in this. I think the past few days have shown how important ICT is to the economy, to the well-being of our country. And as we prepare ourselves for the challenge that this pandemic poses, I think both our strengths and the limitations of what we have been able to do with ICT are becoming quite apparent. But it's all of us have got used to sort of working from home, and we are earlier I used to between Electronics Niketan and the North Block and South Block and Shastri Bhavan and all that. And now I keep moving between Zoom and Teams and all kinds of other WebEx and various other links. And today I'm happy to be used to hear Meet as well. So the past few days have also shown us what we are able to accomplish even within a short time. When it comes to a crunch, I think we have an amazing set of offers from the industry. Almost everyone from the industry has worked closely with us, and I have a brilliant team of serious technology persons who have come together to create the Arogya Setu app for us. And this is being guided by Lalitesh, who was who had played a very, very key role in bringing up Google Maps when he was at Google. And so first of all, I would like to, not get to the security and the, investment in security. First of all, I would like to appeal to all of you to sort of popularize the Arogya Setu app. It's an app and underlying ecosystem that is being developed. It's extraordinarily important that we get this app downloaded and functional on almost each and every smartphone in the country. We are also working on options to make this useful with the feature phone, and even for people who do not have a smartphone through Arogya Setu IVRS option, which has been developed very quickly for us by Professor Jhunjhunwala, and now we are sort of taking over that to create a nationwide rollout. With this, as we have been participating in the in various meetings on Zoom and on various other platforms, the cybersecurity concerns once again become upfront. And we've been sort of hoping that, the cybersecurity is, but we keep hearing something or the other. So it's time to First of all, it's wonderful that an Indian platform like Airmeet has also come in. But cybersecurity aspects, I think, are going to be exceedingly important for us as we move into the area, into the period of 5G and almost, ubiquitous dependence on ICT for. I think it's extremely timely that DSCI has taken this initiative. Uh, we have joined up with DSCI. We have a center of excellence that has been sort of set up jointly by us with DSCI, and I think that is started out with a challenge round, trying to create and recognize Indian software products in cybersecurity. And I would also urge all of you to have a look at what is happening, vis-a-vis that challenge round, and try to sort of help out with what we are trying to accomplish there. We are also, I think, in many of the tools and tool sets we use. Can get built with Indian effort. I think as a country of a billion persons, a large number of them now making regular use of ICT. We cannot afford as a major nation not to have a serious grip on ICT and especially on cybersecurity. So it's I am sure that the market in India is very attractive. You all can see how attractive it is. In December of 2019, we had also come out with a preference, some kind of procurement, and that will help the major cybersecurity products that emerge in India to get access to the government market and through the government also to a larger market. So whatever we are able to recognize as strong cyber products, we will also facilitate their being available on GEM, so that it is not just the central government but also state governments and the PSUs that have access to that in a very sort of simplified. Right now, of course, all our focus is on COVID and its management. A wonderful platform is taking shape. It started with Arogya Setu app, but there's also an underlying platform that is taking shape. And we are, the people who are involved are those who are strong proponents of personal data protection, of privacy, of the finest, elements in design of systems, security, and embedding privacy by design. In this privacy and cybersecurity go hand in hand, and I think I can't emphasize how important it is to have both, tremendous amount of focus on building in privacy by design, and then to secure the system so that it's if you build in a lot of things and then the cybersecurity is weak, then it doesn't make sense. So a nationwide platform that is emerging, I think it's good news for us that it will emerge first as a platform to help us tackle the COVID pandemic, but it will possibly, coalesce into something larger with things like telemedicine, with call center integration, with integration of the health systems, with eventually with integration with Ayushman Bharat, with services in the field. All kinds of things will actually coalesce into this kind of a platform. Uh, there as well, some of the cybersecurity aspects I think are again extremely important. And as we, this is just yet another platform, and I expect that this will take almost the shape and the importance that Aadhaar or GSTN or GEM or such systems have. And as we move forward into the period of getting nationwide platforms up and running, I think cybersecurity must keep pace. And there are many products and tool sets in cybersecurity that we would like to plug in. And it's a great opportunity when any, they always say, it's a unprecedented crisis. And it's always said that we must never waste a crisis. I think it's extremely important for us that we don't waste this crisis. We look at it also as an opportunity, even while we battle, serious challenges on one front, on the front of coming up with new products, on the front of continuing to invest, on the front of continuing to have tremendous faith in ICT. I think let us not, hesitate at all. And it's a great time for investors. It's a great time for change. Things that would otherwise happen in a year or 2 years, I've seen them happen in weeks and days. And it's time for us to bring the same pace and the same urgency into cybersecurity products and cybersecurity investment as well. So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rama, and thanks for involving me in this. I have a hard stop because I have to get into another conference. Sorry, I was not able to figure out all the controls to be able to make the video stream active. But thanks a lot for involving me, and best of luck for the conference, and best of luck to the investors that come in. All of you will help you.
Thank you, Mr. Sani.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, sir.
That was an enlightening speech for us. With this, now I would like to invite Mr. Rajan Anandan. He's the Managing Director of Sikwa Capital, has worked with Google India for a long time, and he's a big backer of Indian tech startups ecosystem. So I would like to invite you, and please give us an inaugural address. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see so many of you here on a Saturday morning to attend a cybersecurity conference in India. It's a good sign that the ecosystem is beginning to emerge in India for cybersecurity startups. I wanted to start by thanking Rama and the DSCI team for one, hosting this conference, and second, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Also, it was good to see Secretary Soni here this morning as well. I thought I would start by hoping that all of you are keeping safe. I think we're in an extraordinary time in the world, as all of you know. We're in this unprecedented global healthcare crisis. It's at a scale, at magnitude, at severity we haven't seen in 100 years. And I think the most important thing is to actually keep ourselves safe, our families safe, our friends safe, our colleagues safe, our team members safe. So in many ways, security has taken a whole new meaning in the last month or so, which is, really taking care of yourselves. So I hope all of you are taking care of yourselves. I think it's going to be a long fight in many ways. It's probably going to be the fight of the century for the world. And I think all of you kind of, I'm sure, are up to speed with everything every country is trying to do. But I think I wanted to start maybe with what does this mean for startups? I've actually attended the previous session, and several of the speakers, I think, were quite articulate about what this means for startups. If you're a startup in India or you're a startup anywhere in the world today, I think the most important thing is number one, again, take care of yourself and take care of your teams, right? Because this is going to be a very difficult period. We've been working at home now for, I guess, about 19 days, maybe 18 days. We'll see, I guess, on Tuesday night how long the lockdown extends. But the reality is, this is going to be not sort of a 1 or 2 month phenomenon in terms of how difficult it is going to be to do business, for us to work from home, and so on and so forth. But it's going to be something that's going to last for a while, right? So I think take care of yourself is, again, I keep coming back to that, is very important. But I think as a startup, it's going to be very important for each of you to develop some scenarios, right? Which is what's going to happen to your business, different scenarios under which, how your demand could evolve or not. And in each of and I, the advice or the suggestions that we've been giving as Sequoia Capital to our startups is assume the worst case and figure out how you can be around if that worst case happens, right? So you can have several demand case scenarios and then kind of figure out what you can have. And what it generally boils down to is runway, cash runway that you have, right? If you're a profitable company and let's say you're selling to the US and your clients are still with you, which is, if you're selling to enterprises, they're still with you. And as several speakers, including Rama, mentioned, I mean, cybersecurity is a must-have product for most enterprises and businesses. You probably still have your customers, right? But it's likely that maybe your new pace of acquisition in the near term, next 30, 60, 90, 120 days may not be good. If you're a company that's actually not profitable, a startup that's not profitable, I think really focusing on runway becomes quite important. And in a nutshell, what we're telling our startups is, if you have 3 months of runway, figure out how to get it to 6 months of runway. If you have 6, try to get to 12. If you have 12, try to get to 18. If you have 18, try to get to 24. Given what we know today, you should really try to get to 24 months of cash runway. And that may be very difficult for some of you, maybe achievable for some of you. But as an aspirational way to think about this, that's sort of what we should think about. Because having led a large software business, actually exactly 12 years ago, I was at Microsoft. I ran Microsoft India for a couple of years. It was a very, very large software business. One of the things that that happens in a enterprise sort of focused or a mid-market focused software company, like I don't know how many of you are in software, how many of you are in services, is your days sales outstanding, term that we use for is DSO. I think of it as receivables, right? Pretty much doubles, right? So if your DSO today is 60 days, you will find very quickly it'll go to 80 days, then 110 days, and 120 days, and that's an okay case, right? It could get much worse than that, and the reason is because when companies get into situations like this, they tend to delay payments because again, everybody is conserving cash, right? And that's what I saw. That's what we saw actually, even in very large business like Microsoft India. So that one singular change can actually have a pretty dramatic impact on your cash flow. And then you have the added complexities of new deals taking much longer to close. Some of your customers may want not pay for some period of time, and so on and so forth. So anyway, this is nothing to do with cybersecurity or the space that you're in, but I just thought I would highlight that. And for those of you who are interested, the venture capital community in India about 2 weeks ago, we put our heads together and we published something on Medium, which I'd encourage all of you to read if you haven't read it. Maybe Rama and the team can get that out to all of you. It was around how you should be managing through the COVID crisis if you're a startup in India, and kind of quite comprehensive in terms of how to think about scenario planning, how to think about cost, how to think about employee engagement, and so on and so forth. So now let's, with that behind us, let's move to cybersecurity. I think as every single speaker has mentioned over the course of the last hour and a half or so, cybersecurity is a very large space, and it's going to get much larger, right? So over the next 5 years, globally, over $1 trillion will be spent on cybersecurity, and that was before COVID. I'm expecting COVID will actually, once the dust settles, meaning businesses obviously have to get back to work. Once the dust settles, I think we'll see an acceleration of the cybersecurity space and also an expansion of the cybersecurity space, right? So $1 trillion will be spent over the next 5 years. I think over the last, I'd say 2-3 years, we've seen the definition of cybersecurity expand pretty significantly, right? And if you look at what sort of happened to the definition expansion, firstly, privacy has become a very, very big deal, right? So you look at GDPR, you look at some of the other regulations all around the world. We've seen a whole set of companies that have come up that help companies manage through privacy regulations. Number one, it's number two, make sure that they are able to protect the privacy of their own employees, their companies, and so on and so forth. And consumer privacy, I think, is going to be one of the single biggest trends. So that started happening really 2 or 3 years ago. Right. The second one would be IoT. It's no longer about protecting humans; it's also about protecting devices, right? That's really started again. That's been underway for a couple of years. Our view is that the IoT movement, Industry 4.0, will actually accelerate significantly over the next in the post-COVID environment, right? And third would be computing at the edge was really quite nascent. Again, we'll start seeing acceleration of computing. So these are certain set of things that that had started that were really sort of multipliers, if you will, or accelerators of the cybersecurity movement. And I think in the post-COVID environment, or even in the current environment, what we are seeing is a new set of opportunities that will open up for cybersecurity startups, right? I'm not going to go through all of them, but clearly the one that's top of mind for all of us is work from home, right? There are over 1 billion people today that are working from home, right? So world has about 7.3 billion people. As of last week, so this data is a bit outdated. At the beginning of last week, there were about 2.3 billion people around the world that were in complete lockdown. Right, or partial lockdown. I mean, think about countries like India. That's a lot of people, right? And then in many other countries, the remaining, call it 4 or 5 billion people, there was pretty significant restrictions, which means at least 1 billion people are working from home today. So if you're the CEO of a large company, or you're the CIO or the head of security of a large company, the single biggest thing you're worrying about is how do you make sure that your networks are protected, your employees are protected, right? I mean, a very interesting example I'm sure all of you have been reading up about is what happened to Zoom, right? It's the most interesting company on the planet right now. They went from 10 million daily active users to 200 million daily active users, literally over a period of like 30, 45 days, and see what happened to them, right? And this is a very well-run company that's valued at 30, 40, 50 billion dollars. And so this is a very, very real thing. And quite frankly, it's accelerating, right? The other thing that I think had begun to pick up, but I think we'll see a significant acceleration. Another area would be this whole area of surveillance, right? I think we've been reading about what's happening in China. What's interesting about what the Chinese have done is taken surveillance and applied it in a COVID scenario, right? Where using computer vision, can you actually start tracking, the whole area of tracing, right? Being able to trace people, right? I think that's a very real thing, right? You can think of it, it's not really cybersecurity, but again, I think my view is this whole area of cybersecurity, which had expanded to privacy, which had expanded to IoT, now will actually expand significantly into many different areas. And the reason this is important is because it creates opportunity, right? Startups get built when there's sort of new opportunities, new large problems that need to get solved. So large space, it's going to get much larger. And I'd encourage all of you that are either building cybersecurity companies or thinking about building cybersecurity companies, or investors that are looking at cybersecurity, look at some of these new spaces, because I think that's where new opportunity is going to come up. Now, moving to India, as I think several of our speakers have mentioned, India is currently, and cybersecurity, in many ways, we have arrived when it comes to overall startups, right? We are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. 40, 50,000 startups valued at north of $100 billion today in terms of valuation. We have 30 unicorns and so on and so forth. But when it comes to cybersecurity, we haven't arrived yet. I mean, we do have 180 startups in the cybersecurity space, but we haven't arrived yet. And I think, and I'll talk more about that. So I think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential in my mind because of a couple of things, right? One, as Rama mentioned as well, post-COVID, the transition of digital, or the digitalization of enterprises is going to accelerate, right? It's going to accelerate dramatically because companies have sort of realized now, for instance, let's take a simple thing like e-commerce, right? E-commerce growth is going to accelerate dramatically because of what sort of happened, right? A lot of people who weren't comfortable, let's say, ordering groceries from home are now comfortable ordering groceries from home, and so on and so forth, right? Online education, kids are getting used to actually studying from home. Doctors, right, who are in many ways Indian doctors, who are the last bastion of digital. As of last week, you can actually do telemedicine, all aspects of telemedicine, and now doctors would much rather talk to a patient on video or on a phone than actually have them come to the office, because of the lack of PPE. So a whole set of reasons why digitalization is going to accelerate, and when that accelerates, it creates lots of opportunity. Apart from the fact that there are going to be all these new spaces that we've been talking about. There's been one, as you know, there are 30 unicorns in India at last count. 4 of them were actually SaaS companies. One of the unicorns from last year, Druva, Druva, that was a unicorn, actually is the only Indian security-focused unicorn, right? So they're a cloud data protection company. I'm sure some of you are familiar with it. At Sequoia, we were fortunate to be a partner with Druva. We were the first institutional investors or partners in Druva. And as an angel investor, before I joined Sequoia, I was a very, very active angel investor. Actually, Druva, I was one of the first angels in Druva. So that's quite interesting, right? That we have one large company, but that's the issue I'll come to, which is, right, what do we need to really do as India if we want to build the ecosystem around cybersecurity startups? And we do have investors, I think, because I think one of the questions has been, are there investors in India who want to invest in cybersecurity startups and privacy startups? Short answer is absolutely yes. In fact, we're going to be starting the next cohort of Surge. It's the Sequoia Seed Program, seed fund that I run, that I co-lead. And in that cohort, we actually have a very, very interesting security-focused startup. I can't tell you which one it is. You'll know in a couple of weeks. So look, I think there's a lot of capital. It will get invested. And there's a lot of interest, which actually brings me then to what do we need to figure out how to do? I think we need to figure out how to build scale companies. Okay, so I think with the challenge we've had with cybersecurity startups, the Indian, let's say 100 or 250 or 200 Indian cybersecurity startups that we've had is very few of them have been able to scale. As a venture capital firm, especially a firm like, let's say, a Sequoia or an Axel or a Lightspeed or a Saif or a Matrix or a Kalari, right? What we're really looking for is companies that can become very large businesses, right? And in the area of SaaS, because a lot of security solutions now are being deployed as SaaS solutions. Now, obviously some are. There's also lots of other forms of deployment. In a SaaS company, basically we have to see the potential for a startup to get to $100 million of ARR, right? Annual recurring revenue. If we can't see, and by the way, that's not next year or the year after, but let's say in 6, 7, 8, 9 years, can this company get to about $100+ million of ARR? And therein, I think, lies the problem, right? I think as is, if you're a founder of a security startup, you have to be able to articulate how this company is going to be able to get to that, right? Now, how does a SaaS company get to $100 million? Really, there are only a few different ways, right? You could have 100 clients who are going to pay $1 million each. You could have 1,000 clients that are going to pay $100,000 each per year, by the way, right? Because it's annual recurring revenue. So it's not the old licensing model, which is, you sell your license and they charge you a 10 or 15% annual maintenance fee. This is actually a SaaS, sort of SaaSy type business, which means I have annual recurring revenue, right? So you can have 100 clients who pay you $1 million each. You can have 1,000 clients who pay you $100,000 each, or you could have 10,000 companies that are going to pay you $10,000 each. All right, so $10,000 per year. So that's sort of how you have to, somehow the math has to add up to $100,000. So in India, what we've seen is a lot of companies that are $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, right? And which is fine. Obviously, to get to $100 million, you have to get to $500,000, you have to get to $1 million, you have to get to $5 million. But I think you've got to be able to demonstrate how is this trajectory going to really accelerate to go from, let's say, $2 or $3 million to $10 million in 18 months, then get to $50 million from there in, let's say, 2 or 3 years, and then get to $100 million, right? And therein, actually, that has been, I think, the single biggest constraint that we've had in the cybersecurity space. And then you ask yourself, why is that, right? Why are companies not scaling more quickly? It could be a couple of reasons, right? It could be one, they're not focused on the right part of the security. Security is not security, right? I think you've seen the slides from the DSCI team and Rama and several of our speakers have talked about it. There are so many subsegments of security. Are you focused on the right segment, right? Can it really lend itself to building a large business? Second could be, are you focused on the right market, right? Can only selling to Indian enterprises help you build a $100 million security company over the next 4 or 5 years? I don't know, right? Maybe. And the reason I say maybe is as this whole digital transition accelerates, right? I mean, look at what UPI has done to payments. Look at what's going to happen in telemedicine. Look at what's going to happen in e-commerce. Look at what's happening in payments. Possibly, but it's probably going to be hard, right? So then the question becomes, okay, to build a $100 million company, at a minimum, you probably need to be massively regional, right? India, Southeast Asia, GCC, possibly China, possibly Japan, or you have to be an India-US company, right? So one of those scenarios has to play out, and I'd say that is. So that's sort of one, are you focused on the right space? Second, are you focused on the right geography? And third, do you have the let's say the GT, let's assume you have the right set of products, right? Do you have the right GTM capability to be able to scale that fast, right? And building GTM is not easy, especially given the relative nascent stage. Even in a traditional SaaS company, it's not easy. And I think in a security company, it gets even harder, right? So I think those are some of the things that, I think as an ecosystem, we need to grapple with, because to me, the question is less about can we have another 500 or 1,000 startups in the cybersecurity space. To me, the question is how do we go create another 5 Dhruvas, right? Billion dollar security focused companies from India. Now they're obviously in the cloud data protection space. There are many other spaces. As I talked about, I think we're going to have a huge amount of opportunity, right? Like just take the area of work from home, right? And all the security challenges that are going to come because of work from home. That's going to be a huge space. Let's take surveillance, which is like virtually non-existent in India. China has many, multi-billion dollar companies that are in the surveillance space, right? Now, their surveillance, they started off in a different place. Our surveillance, we're probably going to start off in a different space, right? It's going to be tied probably more to healthcare, but using computer vision in very interesting computer vision sensors. So think of it as surveillance that includes sort of AI ML, which is computer vision with IoT, with healthcare devices, that, all those things put together. Can you come up with sort of interesting solutions? So that's sort of how I think about it. I'm really excited that I think DSCI has put this conference together, and it's great to see so many of you that have joined this morning. And I would say, look, there's never been a better time globally to be thinking about the whole area of security, cybersecurity, but it's really cybersecurity plus. I think we need a new term for this because it's become much more than just traditional what we've thought of as cybersecurity. And it's a great time to be focusing on this area. But I think as a country, as an Indian startup ecosystem, we need to go from sort of starting up to scaling up. Right? How do we build large companies quickly? And I think that's sort of the next phase when it comes to this whole cybersecurity space that we need to think of. So thanks again, Rama and team for having me. It's been great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that has really given us a kickstart to this event on making India a destination for cybersecurity innovation. I would like to thank Mr. Rajan and Ms. Rama for their time. We'll be starting with another session by Mr. Saket Modi in a few minutes. Please stay connected. We will be right back in a few minutes. If you have any questions for speakers, please feel free to put it in the chat window, and we'll try to get them addressed at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan.
Thank you, Rama. Bye.